goodness, it's Friday, and we've reached the weekend edition of the Sportsline Podcast right here on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neill. Folks, if you do live in Southern Ontario, there's a whole lot to be excited about if you're an entertainment enthusiast, because there will be more than one option, being Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, to capture first-class concerts and sporting events. Now, following 2 years of when will it happen, the fences outside FirstOntario Centre are the obvious sign that the building is now closed to the public. This week, the Oakview Group, the largest developer of sports and live entertainment venues in the world, led by CEO Tim Lewicki, along with a who's list of bigwigs, officially kicked off the start of the reported $300 million transformation during a special groundbreaking event to transform the downtown facility into a state-of-the-art venue. Now, for his take on what was said and what was heard at the ceremony was Hamilton Spectator columnist Scott Radley, I guess a radio guy as well too. But thanks for joining us, bud.
No problem. Your intro there, the thing that shocks me when you said it's 2 years, it's got to be more than 2 years. Mm-hmm. That's what made this whole thing, I think, so shocking to people, that it actually happened. Is this thing seems like it's been going on for a long time. Maybe it is 2 years. I don't know, but it seems like it's like
I think it's 2
that
years.
And the LRT are running side by side of what's going to get done first.
Will it happen? Will it not happen? What are we waiting? When are you going to get? But we lost two sports teams out of it as well.
But there are, as at the beginning of the event yesterday, Tim Lewicki went up. He actually stopped talking, went out the door on Bay Street, and knocked on the wood and goes, "It really is a wall. It really is a construction fence. It's happening." And it is that, I think, to most people is the real surprise here. It is happening.
What were your feelings of the entire thing? I mean, our feelings at CHCH were the fact that this was going to be, and I'm sure you've covered 50, maybe 100 groundbreaking things.
Very,
here.
very exciting.
They're generally, the camera op, and that kind of opportunity for a lot of bigwigs and dignitaries to say, "Hey, look what we're doing." But this was a little bit bigger.
Well, look, the groundbreaking thing, it's always just a photo op. You put a bunch of people in hard hats who've never worn one before and take a picture of them. There's been a lot of skepticism and doubt about whether this was ever going to happen. Mm-hmm. But I don't think anyone has ever had a negative thought towards the concept of fixing up this arena, especially when you're talking about almost $300 million in private money coming in. I don't know who would be upset about that. That's a great thing. Mm-hmm. That's a great thing. It was just about whether this was going to happen. But now that the ball is rolling, it's a terrific thing that this is going to happen, and it's not costing the taxpayers. Who could not be happy about that?
Right. Now, is this one of those things that you believe, and I know this is one of those things, these Hamilton buzzwords about the downtown renovation. This kind of kicks it off, doesn't it?
Are you talking about the whole downtown or just the arena?
Well, at least that area, we'll say. I mean, anything to the east of, I guess, or east and west to Hamilton Place or whatever we're calling it nowadays. Right. I mean, just that whole downtown core.
So, all right. So let's break this into two things. So, yes, I do believe that Tim Lewicki, and for people, I mean, I think everybody knows who Tim Lewicki is, right? He's the guy who used to be the head of Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, hired Brendan Shanahan, hired Masai Ujiri, guy who now runs this company, Oakview Group, that builds arenas all over the place in the biggest cities in the world. So he is entirely credible. So I believe wholeheartedly this arena will be done. The project will be finished, and it will look fantastic when it's done. There's no reason to believe anything otherwise. But the second part of it is, and they've talked about it, that this is going to revitalize that whole area. And I'm going to keep my powder dry a little bit on that one, because I truly don't know. I would like to believe that it will, and I'd like to believe that once people see what's going on, and once people see that this arena is going to be beautiful, and once they see concerts coming in, that entrepreneurs will build restaurants or whatever else down there. But let's not kid ourselves. Right now, that is a challenging part of town. There are challenges there that are going to have to be dealt with. I was walking in to the press conference yesterday with one of the city councilors who had parked near me. We happened to arrive around the same time. And as I walked in, right by the Salvation Army, there 3 guys were lighting up crack pipes on the sidewalk. That is something that is going to have to be figured out. Something you don't want to ask people to come from Ancaster, Dundas, Toronto, wherever, and this area be a part of town that doesn't invite people in. At the same time, I don't think we want to be totally unsympathetic and say, get rid of all the whatever. There has to be a solution found. I just don't know who's going to do that or how it's going to do it or whether this is going to spin off to create all that. I don't know. We'll see.
There's that school. Sir John A. Macdonald, I believe.
Yep.
Like,
vacant.
Like just sitting there. Every time I look at that area, because of the way there's a one-way street going on one side and another street of Cannon, I guess Cannon on the other side, and I guess they all join for York or whatever that is there. I look at that area and I'm thinking to myself, wow, you could put up 2 spectacular looking condos right there. And it would just, and think about if you were selling this, I'm not a realtor or whatever, but you would have like 2 sides of the buildings. You got the escarpment, the other 2 you get the lake view. Like it just, I think of a entertainment facility there and whatever there else. Like the possibilities are so endless there.
But you have budding positions that people have. On the one hand, and I get it, you want to make sure that people who are downtown, who are in the area, who are troubled, who are home, that you are not just, remember when the Beijing Olympics were happening and we heard stories that they just rounded up everybody who was homeless and moved them. So you can't do that, but you also can't do nothing. And I don't know how the 2 budding influences or the 2 budding positions come to a resolution. Someone is going to have to not say, we got to get the Salvation Army out of there and I don't care where it goes. You're going to have to, if you want that to happen, you're going to have someone who negotiates, navigates a thing to say, we're going to put it here, here's why it's better, here's the facility. But again, the amazing part about this whole discussion is just you and I having this discussion, there are people listening going, they're trying to put the rights of people who go to a show over the rights of the people on the street. And it gets to this point where you're not even supposed to talk about it.
Right.
Because then you're unsympathetic or you're uncompassionate or you're not humane. I think there is a way that you can solve and deal with both things. That you can deal with the people who are facing troubles in their life, and rebuild that downtown and clean it up a bit in that area. There's got to be a way to do it. I just don't know who's going to make that happen.
Well, and we keep hearing about first-class restaurants and whatever else. And if they build it, they will come, right? I always believe that. And if one beautiful building's there, maybe someone else decides to build another beautiful building. And you're correctly saying that there are issues in that area. Isn't Vancouver the perfect example where a whole community of people were displaced into an area? Isn't that the example? Shouldn't we be knocking on the door of people in Vancouver and the city councillors in Vancouver and saying, how did you take care of this situation?
Yeah, but Vancouver's got big problems now with opioid. They got a whole other thing. I don't know if Vancouver's the city we want to be knocking on the door of, but there have to be places that have done a good job with this and clean it up. People who are listening in London may be able to tell me if I've got this right, but London, Ontario, when Budweiser Gardens back in the day, I think it was the Labatt Centre originally, when it was first rebuilt, my understanding is that area was not great. But when that opened and you suddenly had all these concerts, stuff started to build up around it, and now it's a destination place, one of the busiest arenas in North America. So it's you just have to, someone is going to have to shepherd this thing to say, we've got 2 real issues that look like they conflict, but they don't necessarily have to. And here's how we can deal with this, and here's how we can deal with this, and everybody ends up being reasonably happy with the outcome. Right now, though, again, you have a lot of people seeming to be dug in, some saying, I will never come down. I'm never coming downtown because what I just talked about, walking by the crack pipes or the syringes, which I've walked by down there too, or whatever else. And others saying, if you make those people move, you're a heartless whatever, and we can't, for an arena, affect people's lives this way. We need social services. They both can be true. They both can be true.
You know, I listened to a lot of the conversation there, you know, whether it be Mr. Leiweke or the Live Nation folks, even the mayor. I heard a lot about acoustics and concerts and that kind of stuff. Kind of didn't hear a lot about sports teams. Where is, I mean, you've got this beautiful, what's going to be an 18,000 seat facility. I certainly hope that we would have a team here.
Okay, so you're right that you did not hear a ton about it in the press conference. After the press conference, I was talking to Tom Pistori, who's the Canadian head of Oakview Group, and he said, and I wrote it in the paper today, he said unequivocally, we will have a hockey team. Okay? What team is that going to be? So earlier in the day, I had spoken one-on-one with Tim Leiweke, and we got talking about sports and things. Well, he made some very interesting comments, and again, they're in the paper today, but one of the comments was, you look down the road at the Marlies, and he goes, they're playing in the Coca-Cola Coliseum. I think they deserve something nicer than that. So we're keeping an eye on that. Take that for what you might take it for. Here's an interesting one that he didn't really answer, and I may not just have asked the question because we're talking about a lot of things. I may not have burrowed far enough, but in the last couple weeks, what's his name? The drawing a blank. Who owns part owner of the Maple Leafs has got the WNBA team.
Larry Tannenbaum. Yeah.
Larry Tannenbaum has got the rights to an expansion WNBA team. You've already got the Raptors and the Leafs and hundreds of concerts and shows in Scotiabank. Can you fit another full-time professional team into that arena? Is there a chance that they could look to Hamilton to put the WNBA team in here? I don't know, because it's off season from those teams. I'm not sure, but you know, again, something that some people have mentioned, maybe that's here. Another one that, now this is not a team per se, but it's something to keep an eye on, is that Oakview Group and Tim Leiweke are business partners with Silver Lake Group, I think it's called. They recently just bought the company that owns UFC and WWE. So now you've got business partnerships with the company that runs those two. Could we see a few UFC or WWE events coming in every year? So you start to look at these things and say, so Pistori says there will be a team here. It could be the Women's Professional Hockey League for all we know. I mean, would that fill the building? Some days. Would it do it consistently? I think that league, we're waiting and seeing what it's going to look like in a couple of years, but maybe. But there's going to be things here. It's just at this point, look, they've got 18 months to figure it out, or more, because that's when they say it's going to be done, is November 2025.
Which to me is incredible.
You mean as far as the speed?
Yes.
So they're not having to tear down all the, like he said, like all the steel and all the concrete was, as we were walking through yesterday, all the steel and concrete is in good shape. So it's kind of like renovating your kitchen rather than building a new house. You got to tear everything out down to the studs, but it's not as time consuming.
The foundation's good.
All the other stuff. Right. So it is ambitious. It's aggressive. And I know today, even online, a lot of people are going, yeah, 18 months, right. Like, tell me that again in 10 years when this thing is still being built. You know what? I'm gonna give the benefit of the doubt to Tim Leiweke, because, again, his company has put timelines on other buildings, and they've hit them. So, you know, my position is, until you show that you can't be trusted, your word is not good, I'll take you at your word. His word is good, so I'll go with his word right now.
Yeah, and he's that kind of guy too. Like, I mean, if he says it's going to happen, it's going to happen. It's been his history. He's a short-term guy. He likes to peck in and out of projects, get it done, next one. And I mean, there's a long list of, I mean, what he did in Seattle to that building where the Kraken play right now.
Drove by it last year. I drove by it. It's an amazing building.
Amazing. But yet the old part of it's still there.
Same situation to Hamilton. Right. You kept the structure. You did everything else inside. And I mean, look, I'm not so naive as to believe that something could not come up that delays this thing. We've seen delays. But as I say, he's a guy who has earned his credibility, and so until there's reason to believe otherwise, I will take him at his word on this one.
Heard him on the radio talking about the thoughts of a National Hockey League franchise, and the one thing that came out to me was he said, I have an allegiance still to Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and of course to Gary Bettman. And to me, that sounded like the thoughts of an NHL team in Hamilton are not happening.
So I have already had comments from people who say, don't rule that out. Bubba, you and I'm sure everybody listening and watching, if you've been in this area for long enough, have been down this path so many times that what I just said, but until your word is not good, then all right, now I'll go the other way. We've been down this path so many times, I am not believing anything about an NHL team until I see the trucks moving up and putting the equipment into the dressing room. I find it impossible because here's the other thing. Michael Andlauer changed a lot about the valuation, you would think. When he bought the Ottawa Senators for $1 billion, what would a team now in Southern Ontario be valued at? At least 50% more than that?
At least.
So
fair.
Let's say $1.5 billion. So you're now talking up front, $1.5 billion. What they're doing with this arena, with the $280 million, I don't believe that it would get it to NHL standards. So you'd have to do another renovation probably. Let's throw another $250 million in at least. And then you've got to hire staff and sign players. I mean, you're talking about probably a $2 billion investment minimum to get a team. And and I'm just guessing at this based on other things. There's not a lot of people around with $2 billion.
No.
And willing to risk. I know everyone says, oh, it would make money guaranteed. There are no guarantees in life. You're putting your $2 billion down, and you are hoping that it were, and I suspect it would, but that's a lot of dough.
You think maybe we could get like Snoop Dogg in here again, and like he could like back a team in Hamilton?
Snoop Dogg and Ryan Reynolds together.
Yeah, right?
He's tied up with Wrexham. But no, I was going to say never say never. I'm leaning towards the it's never happening phase. I am there, and I am. We just had and this is, forgive this weird segue, but we just had a friend who's been battling cancer. Thankfully, she's doing very, very well. But I was saying to her husband the other day, you sort of look at this where you almost expect the worst, hope for the best.
Right.
And it's turned out great. In this case, I kind of feel it's the same way. With the NHL coming here, I always expect the worst. You hope for the best. Maybe somewhere, someday, another Jim Balsillie comes along with $2 billion, but I don't expect that ever.
Yeah.
You just maybe I'm just a pessimist, but I've been down this road too many times.
I'm with you too, and just like Wicky's saying that he has an allegiance to Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, which seems to me he's kind of saying, well, I'm still in bed with those guys. There's no way I'm going to do anything to interrupt that relationship, which would be having a team here would interrupt that relationship.
Unless
it's the AHL franchise.
Well, look, again, I almost feel ridiculous talking about this. I feel like but unless somebody from that team got the okay, and that name Larry Tannenbaum, but again,
Kilmer Group.
No, it seems you would have to get the Leafs. I agree to be. I would think on board with it somehow. That would mean there would have to be a connection there somehow. I don't know. Let's move on because I honestly, the NHL just to me, dream away, hold on to that dream. But I think I will be long in my grave before that thing ever arrives here.
Yeah, I'll join you as well too in that as well. Hey, thank you so much for your opinions and thoughts on this. We have you in a lot of the times for the Sportsline Square Off. There are a couple of things that I kind of need to talk to you about.
Okay,
and we know we shouldn't spend tons of time on it, but you're just so intriguing on so many variety of things in sports that I got to get some opinions. Okay, we've just woke up so many people in the we'll say the Eastern time zone woke up this morning to the news that world number 1 PGA golfer Scotty Scheffler
most boring man on the planet.
Boring man on the planet. Has been arrested.
Yeah.
Like, going to his trying to make his second round tee time at Valhalla in Louisville, Texas. Do you have any thoughts on this?
So when I woke up and I saw it, and then I saw the booking photo where they've got, the story, let me back up. The story, there were, I think, 3 ESPN reporters there, 2 or 3, and they're describing something that is not wild. Like, this is not a wild shootout in the downtown Louisville, Kentucky. And yet here we have the booking photo of Scotty Scheffler at 9 a.m. in an orange prison jumpsuit. And it's like, really? Like, we're really going here? This is
being walked off in cuffs.
This is, I'm not encouraging anyone doing this, but if you blow by a school bus, you get a ticket. You have to go to court, but you get a ticket and a summons. They don't drag you to prison and put you in, unless you hit someone, in an orange jumpsuit. Here we're like, the story that we're getting, and we're getting 2 very different ones. The story from the police officer sounds like it's something from Smokey and the Bandit, where he's racing through the barricade and got the cop on the hood of the car.
He got dragged. His pants are all ripped,
and he's injured, and everything else.
He's in the hospital.
Everyone else and the other people who were there, like, yeah, I didn't see that. And Scotty Scheffler, I'm sorry, I know that nobody thought about O.J. Simpson in a way that we later learned. We thought he was a great guy, so I suppose you never can. But Scotty Scheffler blowing a barricade, it's the most unlikely connection of words into a sentence you could ever. There's 10 guys on the PGA Tour that I would kind of go, maybe. Scotty Scheffler would have been like the last guy. Yeah. The last guy. So we will see. I was reading just before I got here that the mayor of Louisville is involved now. Oh. The head of the PGA Tour is involved now. Possibly the governor.
Oh, red tape.
And you know what this made me think of? After about 5 minutes, I'm lying in bed just looking through Twitter, and you know what immediately came to mind? I may be the only person who drew this connection. I went back to 1983 when Dave Winfield was arrested for killing a seagull.
Oh, yes.
And everyone in Toronto was like, what are you doing to us? We look like a bunch of buffoons.
Yes.
He threw
there
a
was
baseball.
The animal rights people that were furious.
But we looked like a bunch of rubes because now we're arresting a major league star for hitting a seagull with a warm-up throw. And here, I'm sure people in Kentucky, many of them are saying the exact same thing as, folks, what do you, like, settle this, figure it out. Give the guy a $20 ticket, do whatever, but you're making us look like a bunch of goofballs.
Well, I'll tell you, just to end this topic here quickly, is that, of course, as in waking up and trying to figure out what's going on there. And of course, my first inclination is to go to the Golf Channel or go to the sports stations. Yeah. And as I'm going through, I hit CNN, and there's Wolf Blitzer. Wolf Blitzer.
Brought out of retirement from his war.
He's anchoring this with 2 other experts, visuals running on the side. They're in 4 boxes like this is the Iran-Iraq war. I'm like, are you kidding me? Scotty Scheffler arrested.
Yeah, breaking news.
Breaking news.
Yeah. Oh, the CNN always has breaking news for everything on there, but it's
nuts.
It's ridiculous. Now, look, again, we may find something that comes out that says, Scotty Scheffler did this. It would be shocking to me. And yet, the amazing thing about this, in the most silly and probably not good way, is that he is kind of a boring guy. He's an outstanding golfer. He's a phenomenal golfer, but there's no outward personality. Yeah. If this is probably going to give him extra cred,
don't say it.
that now, like, he's done something or is accused of doing something that's not vanilla, and that he is like you. I will bet you money. I will bet you money that there will be people, if they're allowed to, if they're not stopped at the gate on Sunday at the course with T-shirts with Scotty Scheffler in his orange jumpsuit. Well, yeah, but in his orange jumpsuit and his mugshot picture. They're guaranteed. All of a sudden, there's something interesting about this guy. Besides, like, this is the guy I remember who is so down to earth, and that he was going to leave the Masters winning the tournament to go to be with his wife if she went into labor, as opposed to finishing the event. And everyone's like, "Are you insane?" And he's like, "No, you got to be with your child." And we all went, "Well, yeah, that's good. I don't know if I'm winning the Masters if I'm doing that, but hey, good for you. That's the guy he is." It is a wild story.
You know, I speaking of wild stories, I was listening to some tape, video, watching video and listening to a Tiger Cat press conference, and Tiger Cat's audio network host was conducting an interview. Your old colleague,
Steve Milton.
And
great journalist.
He said something which was really interesting. He said, "And on to my." I'll ask one more question, and I'll send it over to the guy for the Hamilton Spectator, which just seems so weird to me. Right?
To him too, I'm sure.
I'm sure. And he said, like, "Okay, you're covering Ticats, fair training camp. Your thoughts, just kind of general."
Training camp is about as instructive as watching a wall of paint, honestly. And not to the coaches, I know that, but to, when you're watching these guys, it's without hitting, without the threat of hitting, with so many guys in the field, it's really hard. So to see who's doing well or who's not. Sunday night, there's a scrimmage. We'll get a little bit more of a flavor. Then you've got a preseason game where it starts to come. So really what this thing has whittled down to is Bo Levi Mitchell showing up in a walking cast. That was a shocker. But he is back on the field and isn't limping, and that's what you're watching. We're watching is Bo Levi Mitchell looking like he's injured. Doesn't appear to be at this point. The concern I think you have if you're a Ticat fan on that point is he had the injury in Ottawa, had surgery on that leg for the broken leg. If it flared up in training, in preparing for the season and training, is it going to flare up again during the year? That's the first thing. Second thing, the next point on that, Taylor Powell, who's the backup right now. If there's one guy who, because he's the quarterback, he gets the most touches, who's looked really good at camp, it's him. If you're a Ticat fan, the comfort you take is if Bo Levi Mitchell gets injured, the guy behind him is actually looking at this point of the year good. And then the third thing, and like there's all kinds of other pieces, but the third one is just Justin McGriff is a 6'6" receiver among a forest of receivers this year. They brought in the tallest guys you could. They got a 6'8" receiver out there. They're looking for height, but this guy who got injured in a freak was looking like a star at training camp last year.
Amazing, folks.
Gets a freak injury off the field, is out for the year, comes back. He's kind of the comeback story. He's going to get a starting job in all likelihood, and I had left because I had to do something else. There's 2 practices in the day. I was there for the first practice, talked to the guys, left, and then hear that Justin McGriff did something and was carted off. And so we don't have, that I've heard as of right now, any injury update on this, but my goodness, this
is the other leg, though. We do know it's the other leg. That's good.
But 2 things, as a human being, a really tough luck story. Like he's become the guy that you're rooting for, because I don't know the man. I'm not friends. We've never sat and broken bread, but it's just, how do you not cheer for the guy at this point? But B, a 6'6" athletic guy who can catch the ball and run and has speed in the CFL is something you need on your team. This team wrote this week. This team in the Eastern Semi last year against Montreal had 7 receivers in the lineup on the roster. 4 of them were under 6 feet tall. Nobody was over 6'2". Yeah. They got 11 guys in camp right now, 6'4" or taller. Yeah. 2 or 3 or 4 of those guys are probably going to get spots on this team. That changes the dynamic of your receiving core dramatically if you're the Ticats. Dramatically it changes it, as long as they can play the game.
Right.
It's like you're not just looking for height, you're looking for guys who are tall and can play.
Yeah.
And I always go back, and I know we got to move along, I always go back to I had to look up. I thought it was Bob Obilovich, but it was Marcel Desjardins when he was the GM of the Ticats for a brief period, who made the comment that American receivers are a dime a dozen. And that has been to some degree true over the years in the league. You can always go find another American receiver.
It's true.
But the Ticats have struggled to fill up they've had stars. Tim White is a star.
Yep.
But they've struggled to create a star receiving core where you could put any combo of guys on the field and say, I feel good about that whole group. This looks like it's got the potential for that.
Look at BC, look at Winnipeg.
Yep.
Those are teams that love to upfield the football, and they don't have two guys or three guys. They have 4 guys on the field that at any time the ball can be going to. And yes, you're right with that. And as good as Tim White is, well, we saw what happened in Montreal in that playoff game. Double down on him.
Yep.
Try and good luck with anyone else.
The other thing that big receivers do for you, and it's obvious that, jump balls and all that stuff, but the one other thing, and Taylor Powell mentioned this, is you get a guy who's 6'5", 6'6", as opposed to a guy who's 5'10". They may have not even quite the same skill, because there's not going to be anybody on this receiving core, I don't think, who's as skilled as Tim White. But it gives you a margin for error if you're the quarterback, that they can go get a ball that's not quite
Perfectly thrown.
perfectly. Yep. You can't throw it 8 feet off. But if you're not quite perfect, those big guys can help you out in a large way.
The biggest thing right now is that back shoulder throw, which in essence is a ball thrown short of where it should be. But these guys are so athletic and tall, they can sit there and bring back and bring it or stop the DBs, which are generally 6 feet tall. Yeah. Right? They can't keep up to those guys. So, yeah, that's an important aspect of the Tiger Cats that they really need to improve on. And I'm glad they're addressing it.
I do really, on this point, I do really want to see, and as of this morning, he's still with the team. I mean, anybody could be cut. We don't know. Their cut's coming. But the guy, I can't remember his name, I'm drawing a blank right now, who's the 6'8" receiver. They had him lined up at tight end. I don't know. I can't remember how many 6'8" receivers there have been in the CFL.
Can't think of. Even in the NFL.
I'll figure his name after, of course, which will be of no use to this podcast. But on YouTube, he was playing basketball, college basketball in the States. He was a basketball player before he was a football player. And man, could he get up and throw the ball down.
Yeah.
And there's a couple YouTube videos of him just with these monstrous dunks or getting up and swatting layup attempts by their opponent into the stands. And if you can jump like that and you can be across the middle of the field as a big target, he's intriguing.
It's certainly promising. Baines was one that was really good. Hakanavanu, who they traded for, who used to be with Calgary. Great to see him as well, too, because I think he's going to be a difference maker as a Canadian that went to York University. Okay, let's move off this. PWHL playoffs. I don't know how much you've been watching. And I say this respectfully because there is so much going on, and you can only lock in on one thing. Concern. And I say this in an interesting sort of way, and I don't say it because I think the sport's not going to last or anything like that, but we say this about the NHL. We talk about every sport, about there's the officiating or the scoring or whatever. Scoring is an issue right now, okay? 4 teams make the playoffs. 7 games have been played so far in this round. 20 goals have been scored. 4 teams, 7 games, 20 goals scored.
I'm smiling only because I didn't know that the Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner had joined the PWHL for the playoffs. So that's playoff hockey. In men's hockey, the difference here is you wouldn't think that it would be the same off the top of your head, because in men's hockey, women's hockey has body contact. Let's not kid ourselves. You watch some of those PWHL games, they're physical, but you can't run someone through the end boards. And that's a lot of what is happening in the NHL in the playoffs, is it's become so physical that there's no room. I didn't think that would be the same here. So we'll see. It's still new, so we'll see. The other thing, though, that I was reading this week that is concerning some people is the attendance for the American games has not been good.
Yeah.
And this is the thing with the PWHL that I've sort of been waiting to see about, because first year, it's a novelty. It's still new. Everybody wants to see it. It's exciting. There have been some tremendous crowds. The Bell Centre in Montreal sold out. Scotiabank Arena in Toronto sold out. what happens in year 2 or 3? Does this grow, which we hope, or does the novelty wear off a little bit and it goes back to, whatever number of thousand people you're going to get? This is one of the things I don't know. I'm rooting for it to succeed. I'm rooting for it to find the traction. But we just don't know yet, because previous women's leagues in many sports have struggled with attendance. It's just the reality of it. After the Brandi Chastain World Cup, what year was that, where she had the sports bra picture on the cover of Sports Illustrated?
99, I think?
Yeah, something like that. There was an investor or investors that put huge money into a women's pro soccer league that didn't last, because you get these bursts of excitement and then not so much. WNBA for years has struggled to, some places have been successful. Yep. So we'll see. I really hope that it doesn't get buried in, as you described, just so much that's going on right now. I hope that this doesn't just become a sport, and it hasn't been so far, but I hope it doesn't just become a sport where it's dads and their young daughters who go to watch. You're not going to succeed if that's the case. You have to have a broader base. We'll see. I'm really hoping. I don't think you can judge it this year. I don't think you can judge it next year. Let's see in about year 3 what the level of play is with the scoring, what the rules are. They've got some interesting rules. This idea of picking your opponent in the playoff. I love that. Cool. I love that. Yeah. Let's see where this goes. I'm hoping that it really finds some ground. We'll see.
Well, it's funny because in Boston, 2,700 and not good. Minnesota have had 2 games against the top team in Toronto at 3,300 and 2,700. That's just not good. And they're playing in the XL Energy Arena, which is the same rink the Wild play in, which I'm going to guess is an upward of 18,000 people. And we've seen some old AHL Bulldog games playing at what was Old Cops Coliseum, and what that number looks like in a building like that.
The Boston one, I know what some people will say, and there's probably a point to it that the Bruins are still in. But again, this goes to the idea of, I hope it finds traction, because if the league is only going to succeed if the NHL team is out, well, that's not really succeeding. Right. That's you being the backup plan. You don't want it to be the backup plan. You want it to be 1A, 1B, where people are cheering for both. And so, again, we will see, but there is work to be done. The good news is that there have been good crowds in the Canadian markets.
Absolutely.
And so you start with something. And build off that. And it suggests to me, back to where our conversation started about FirstOntario Centre and the rebuild, if the people who are running that league are smart, and I think they are, and they're looking at expansion, and I'm sure they are, where are you going to expand to then? Are you going to go to in order to really build your foundation, are you going to go now to Arizona and hope, or are you going to say, our first few expansions, let's take it to more Canadian markets where this thing looks like it's working and build the foundation, and then, I hope they do it right. I hope they do this thing right and do it smart, and don't get, the word isn't greedy, don't try and do too much too fast.
For sure.
Build it properly, and you can build something that is sustainable and will last.
That's the same mentality I believe for the CEBL,
100%,
and the CPL as well too.
Any league,
for Chief, because and I think they're doing a great job, both the soccer and the basketball leagues, and especially the basketball one. They're certainly thriving. Caitlin Clark played her first game in the WNBA this week. Highest rated opening game in WNBA in terms of TV rating. Like, the interest is through the roof. Well, Caitlin Clark is finding out that moving up to the big dogs is a little different. And the women who had been around in the WNBA and some that had been retired said, you better get ready, girl. Like, this ain't going to be like NCAA. And at least through 2 games, she's been right. 20 points in her first game, but she was 5 of 15 shooting. And then in her last game playing, Sabrina Ionescu, who was the big talk the year before, right? And the way she was able to break the 3-point record, all-time 3-point record. She had 9 points in this game. Is she in for a big awakening in the Indiana team?
I saw one highlight where she got hammered driving to the basket, like just got flattened. I'm talking about Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting spot that this league finds itself in with her, because I understand that none of the players who have been pros for a while want to come in and have this, how old is she, 22, 23-year-old, come in and dominate the league.
The Caitlin Clark effect.
Yeah, and make it look like and the WNBA is a joke, that this university student can come in and just terrorize this league and tear us all to shreds. They don't want that, because that's a bad look for them as athletes. Mm-hmm. The flip side is you started this segment by saying highest ratings ever. That's not because folks suddenly have this burning desire to watch Indiana WNBA basketball. It's because Caitlin Clark was on the floor.
Yeah.
You need, if you're the opponents, you need her to do well for the betterment of the entire league, but you don't want her to do well against you. Mm-hmm. And it's, Tiger Woods did for golf. The folks who play golf against Tiger Woods in his heyday, I'm sure hated the fact that he beat them all the time. But they loved the fact that purses were going up, and they, because of Tiger Woods, they made so much more money.
Yeah.
There is no argument, I don't think, at this point, that Caitlin Clark has expanded the number of eyeballs watching women's basketball.
Yeah, for sure.
Have grown the number of sponsors who want to get involved in this thing. Caitlin Clark has done already a ton for women's basketball. So, yeah, you don't let her run down the court and just throw in layups because of that, because she's Caitlin Clark. But at the same time, I don't know how many times you want to have her driving to the hoop and someone drops her on her head. Because suddenly Caitlin Clark goes out for the year with an injury.
Right.
I'm sorry. If you're playing for the whomever, they may not be tuning in to watch you. They were tuning in and I'm talking about the casual fans who have just caught on now.
For sure.
The diehards will be there.
That's what you need to attract, is the casual fan.
So the diehards will always be there.
Yes.
Announce that Caitlin Clark is out for the year with an injury. Mm-hmm. All those casual fans who suddenly were just becoming intrigued are now moving on to something else, because there's, as you say, there's so much else to watch. It's a real two-edged sword. You need her to succeed. You don't want her to succeed against you.
Yeah, it's strange, because in that game that they just played against the New York Liberty, you have Brianna Stewart, who played at UConn. I mean, UConn, we're talking here, big-time school. Kia Nurse, I mean, just dominant team of its era, for sure. And she came in there, and she was drafted as well, too, top 10. Right, by New York, and she poured 30 in there. Yet, as you said, is anyone running to the television? As you said, the diehards, yes. But that mid-range person that's still seeking, do I want to watch these games? Brianna Stewart?
Caitlin Clark has been doing the nighttime talk shows, the Jimmy Kimmels and the Jimmy Fallons and stuff. I haven't seen any of the other players doing it. You should, if you're in that league, you may have to bite your lip, because you're not really thrilled with this new person getting all the attention, but it serves a purpose for this league. Was it Brianna Stewart? Who was the former UConn player who during the tournament was really kind of dumping on?
I think Maya Moore. I mean, she's someone that she went four NCAA. Actually, went to four NCAA finals. 1, 2 was the MVP. I think of like 3 of them.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was. One of the players was really on the air live, was really dumping on Caitlin Clark, and it's like you're not seeing the forest for the trees here. This, whether you like her, whether you like her game, whether you think she's a good player, whether you like her as a human, whatever it is, Caitlin Clark has caught something in the public's imagination. And she is drawing eyeballs to your sport that have never been there before. Don't dump on her that hard.
But you know what, though? Don't we see this all the time, Scott? Think about, and we're old enough to remember this. Remember when Gretzky was really good? When he was point after point after point after point, and the guys that represented another era in the 70s, just next to it, we're talking about, because Gretzky started off his dominance in the 80s. There were a lot of people that were 60s and 70s hockey guys that were going, flash in the pan.
Yeah, we would have killed a guy like that.
Yeah, we would. This guy wouldn't have lasted an hour league, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's almost natural that we react this way. Many people react this way.
I guess. Yeah, I mean,
he was drawing eyes. I mean, look what he did for hockey in the United States when he got traded to the Kings.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. You would like to think, I guess, that we learn from history, and that when those people come along who really do grab the attention for our sport, that we, the people who are in it, now should know to say, you know what, even if I don't like him or I think that person is overrated, if they're bringing a lot of new people into my sport, I think I'll keep my thoughts to myself. And which is very ironic because, you know what, we're talking about Scotty Scheffler. We love people and how he's boring. We love people who say stuff and are outrageous and everything. So I don't know, but it just, I don't think it's controversial in any way to say there are more people watching the WNBA today than ever have before. And it's not a coincidence. It's because of Caitlin Clark. You might want to not let her win. I don't mean that for a second, but you might want to, even when you're doing interviews and stuff, talk her up and,
enjoy the ride at the very least.
Yeah, there you go.
Last thing here, again, we're talking about the age group that we're at, and sometimes we're at this age group where sometimes when the phone rings, it's not what we want to hear, right? And again, waking up, in the morning yesterday, the news of Darren Dutchyshen passing away, 57 years old. Like I said yesterday, I think, I think of Gino Reda, I think of Landsberg. There was like the first generation of big-time sportscasters in this company. And remember, folks, there was no TSN, there was no Sportsnet, there was no The Score. This was the lone dedicated sports network in this country.
It used to be on pay-per-view, didn't it? Didn't it start on pay-per-view? It
started out on pay-per-view on like
with First Choice or First whatever it was called, the movie channel,
Super Channel or whatever it was called. You're right. You're very correct in that. You reminded me of that. And then it came the second generation of people, which Darren Dutchyshen was a part of. And I mean, you're a radio and newspaper guy. What'd you think of him as a TV guy?
I am, when you watch certain people do a job, and whether it's TV or anything else, and it looks like it's entirely not a job, and then you get a chance to peer behind the curtain a little bit. I've had a little bit of chance. I'm sitting here doing this with you. And when you have someone who makes it look like there is no effort, like you've just showed up and away you go, and you don't realize, but there's hours. Anyway, when you do that, it is a huge talent. And he was one of those guys that you watched and you would say, he just walked in an hour or 5 minutes before the show and they handed him a script and away. No, that's not how it works. But it's a talent to. This is going to sound really wrong. It's a talent to look not prepared. And it's not that you're not prepared. It's just it's not scripted. It doesn't feel like you're reading a script. It feels like you're just having a conversation. Half the time, and he was one of the things he was great at, which is probably why he did Sports Desk for 30 years, is because when he was calling the highlight, it felt like he was seeing it for the first time like you were, as opposed to, again, something being scripted. I think most people can tell when people are just reading a script. Even if you try to hide it, I think people can, the pace, the meter, whatever, I think people can get it, and natural is an amazing gift to have if you are on TV, especially. Radio too, but especially on TV. If you can be natural and look like you're just having a conversation with someone in their living room, it's a great gift to have, and he had that.
So well said there. And the neat thing to me about him, and getting to know him a little bit too, was not only the love for the job and the fact that, and I know 4 out of 5 days a week I feel like this. I'm so lucky to be doing what I'm doing, and always there was that one day that just, right? But he certainly loved what he did.
Might want to clip that little demonstration right there for a future promo for Sportsline Podcast. Carry on.
3, 2, 1. Right? But, I look at what he did, and I look at the value of the highlight show at that point when he was in his prime. And when TV sports shows were in their prime, you've got your phone. It's not the same.
No.
Like, people aren't running to see any highlight shows anymore because everything's available on your phone, instantaneous. But he was a part of that time where, what will Dutchie say?
Yeah.
What will anybody say?
Well, he's the second. To me, he was the second generation of that. And one of both of our friends who used to be here on CHCH, when Mark Hebscher and Jim Taddy were doing Sportsline, Global Sportsline, once upon a time, that was entirely unique. And I was in university back when that was at its heyday, and we would stay up for that half an hour because you didn't have, again, I think TSN was still on pay-per-view at that time, if it even existed at that time, and you didn't have these other ones. And that was, around here anyway, that was so unusual that it was fun, it was light, it was not totally serious. Darren Dutchyshen comes in, and those guys come in after that in the next one. But it's you're right. It's a time that's gone now, because we were talking again. We're jumping around here, but when I woke up this morning, I grabbed my phone and saw the thing about Scotty Scheffler. I didn't watch a half-hour sportscast.
You didn't have to wait for it.
I got that thing, and so if there is a highlight in the Stanley Cup playoffs game, a wild situation, you just go to your phone now, and there's a clip of it, a 12-second clip of video on your phone. Once upon a time, you sat there and it was an entirely, and there was a what's the word I'm looking for? There was you were sort of excited. It built up that you were waiting to see this thing. They still do it. I don't want to be insulting any of the people on any of the sports stations. I don't know that it's as anticipated or is executed quite the same.
It's just a fact.
It's different. It's different because we're not. Once upon a time, Hebsy and Taddy or Dutchyshen or whomever, we were seeing that clip for the first time with them. Now you go on there, you've either watched the game,
and maybe for the only time,
and so there was also an excitement. You saw it and you were exposed to it, and there was, and it's different. I don't want to be the old guy on the grass saying, "Get off my lawn."
It's just the truth, though, Scott.
It's not necessarily worse.
No.
It's different. It's different.
Yeah. Well said, Scott. I mean, we're originally bringing to talk about what's going on with Oakview Group and the new building here in Hamilton. And of course, we just can go off on anything. This is a normal between you and I, but always appreciate your time. Thank you for coming in, and your opinions are always, I guess, well respected, and again, much appreciated on the Sportsline Podcast.
Can I throw one other name out, though, just very quickly, because we're talking about Dutchyshen dying. A Hamilton sports legend died this week that I wanted to just throw out there for a second. Bill Friday.
Yes.
NHL referee,
yes.
Not just NHL referee. He was the guy who, when the WHA started, he jumped to the WHA. Very colorful guy, very colorful official. If you can ever find clips of him, it's hard because it was back in the day. Because he left to go to the WHA, which offered him double the salary.
Hold the hull.
The NHL had to suddenly increase these salaries to all their officials. So he single-handedly drove up money to the referees. But the thing about Bill, one of the amazing things, you've experienced this too, one of the amazing things about doing this job over the last number of years is the legends that I've been able to get to know a little bit. Harry Howell and Ange Mosca, and you go down the list. Bill Friday, like all those guys, Bill Friday was just the loveliest guy. He was just the nicest man who would sit and talk hockey with you. Interesting story, my son, years ago when he was probably 7 or 8, their team won this competition for, I don't know, selling tickets or something, and they got to play a game, a special game somewhere, and I called up Bill and I said, any chance that you'd throw on the ref? It was just like an exhibition game. Any chance you'd throw on the stripes again and come out so the kids could have an NHL, WHL? And he goes, yeah. And he was probably 75 at the time. I don't know, 70. And he came out and reffed the game.
Really?
And was thrilled to do it. And I know that he did old timers games afterwards, just quietly put the stuff on. And just, some of these local legends that we're losing now because it's just, it's time passes. It's sad, but Bill Friday was an absolute original and one of the great ones.
Bit of a history book. Well done. Thank you so much. Folks, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports. And if you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline podcast do want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button, and be sure to investigate the other entertaining and informative podcasts we do have to offer. Newsmakers and trending now. Ooh, that's hot off the press. It's Friday for the outstanding people that make the Sportsline podcast possible. Thank you so very much, and we'll see you next week.